Hey everybody, it's Monika and welcome to my channel where I help social workers, counselors, and helping professionals deepen their level of self-awareness while boosting their competence and confidence in the profession. Now, with everything that's going on in the world, a lot of you might be thinking of ways to help supplement your income, and one of the things that you might be considering is becoming an adjunct social work professor. So for today's video, I'm going to be covering 5 things to consider and to keep in mind if you're wanting to be a social work adjunct professor. So if you're interested in this topic, then please keep watching. I'm Monika Thomas, the founder and clinical social worker at Kindred Connections Therapy Center. I've been a social worker for over 12 years. I decided to do an entire YouTube channel on my journey from cubicle working social worker to successful entrepreneur. Welcome to my channel. Now, if you've watched my 20 careers in social work video, then you already know that being an adjunct faculty member is something that I've already done in my profession. But before I started as an adjunct faculty member, it was always something that I wanted to do. Even though I didn't have any clue on what it entailed, I didn't know any way to start and get my foot in the door, and I didn't know what it would take to be a committed and effective teacher. So if this is something that you're interested in, I wanted to share just a couple of things with you, 5 things that I think will be helpful if you're looking into transitioning into being an adjunct faculty member. One thing that I had to make sure of is that my resume was up to par and that my skills were exactly where they needed to be to even apply for the position. So when I first applied, I was in my early 30s. So I had worked a fairly decent amount of social work positions, and it wasn't just about me working in the positions, but it was me being able to describe the experiences that I was able to acquire. And it was also my ability to communicate the practice of social work in very real and literal terms. So things that students would relate to, not just textbook knowledge, but my actual experience from working in the field. So if you've not been working in the field long enough, don't do this just because you want to make the extra money, because the extra money, depending on the school, can definitely come in handy if you're working a low-wage social work position. But this is not something that you want to do strictly to supplement your income. You have to be committed to the students, and you have to be committed to increasing your education within the social work profession. So again, I had to make sure that my resume and experience truly reflected everything that I had done in the field before I had applied. And it was during this time I hadn't even heard of a curriculum vitae. I didn't know what it was. The only thing that I had at the time was a resume. So when I transitioned from my traditional social work positions into working in higher ed, I had to redo my entire resume. I had a mentor of mine who allowed me to see his curriculum vitae, and I wrote down and rewrote my entire resume to reflect what I had done in my social work career. So you want to make sure that you have the expertise and the knowledge to even begin to apply to teach in the social work department. Number 2, you have to ask yourself, are you a good teacher? I had previous experience where I had facilitated groups, I facilitated parent meetings, I was already educating the public, I was educating parents, and I was educating teenagers around mental health and accessing resources and services in the community. So I already had a background in teaching, so that worked to my advantage. Also, I was in a lot of different leadership positions in the community, and one thing that I made sure to do was to volunteer at the college where I wanted to teach. So the college had annual events that they would host in the community, so I signed up to be a part of the committee so I can learn the ins and outs of the college, how it works, who some of the key players were, so when I was ready to apply, they were already familiar with me and with my work. And don't discount any teaching experience that you have that's not traditional teaching experience. So if you were in college or in high school and you taught a cheerleading camp, or if you taught a basketball camp, anything where you had to provide step-by-step instruction for someone and you had to demonstrate patience, you had to demonstrate the ability to communicate effectively for people to understand and follow the flow of your thought. If you had any experience like that, know that that can count toward your teaching experience. So it's what we like to call in social work as transferable skill sets. So what are some other areas in your life where you've used related skills, but it might not be directly tied to what you're doing now? So I had to familiarize myself with teacher lingo. I didn't know what pedagogy was. I didn't know how to structure a course outline. I had previous experiences where I put programming together, so I tried to relate the two so that it was similar, but I was coming into a totally new realm and a totally new world that I had to be humble and to respect, because teachers have a very specific skill set that you have to learn if you want to be an effective and a good one. So I sought out other colleagues who had also taught or who were teachers in the public school setting or in higher ed. I asked them as many questions as I could think of, and I made sure that I was totally prepared to transition into the role of an educator. Hey everybody, if you like this video, please like, subscribe, or share it. Also, be sure to click the notification bell because I upload a new video every Monday. And make sure you check out the Afrocentric Social Worker podcast. You can check that out on all the major podcasting platforms. The link to the podcast can be found below in the description. And number 3, you want to think about what connections do you have or what connections can you form in your local community to help get your foot in the door with the place where you want to teach. Now, if you're wanting to teach online, this might be a different kind of animal because there's no person that you can connect with locally to help them know about your skill sets and what you're able to bring to the table. But if you're wanting to apply at a local college or university, you definitely want to see who the key players are in different departments and then see how you can lend a hand or volunteer with an initiative or a program that they're offering in the community. You want to go into your personal network to ask if anyone has already taught at the college, if anyone knows anyone who's teaching at the college, who could possibly be the person who's going to be on your interview committee. And then you want to prepare for your interview. You want to practice. You want to take out every social work book that you've ever used in college. You want to familiarize yourself with the theories, with practice, with the skills, anything that would be helpful for the position that you're applying for. So I began teaching Introduction to Social Work. So I went through all of my Introduction to Social Work information. So I was very familiar with the information because it had been a while since I had been in college, but I knew I was using the skills every day. I just knew that I had to use that key language in my interview. So that would be another thing that I would recommend. Find out what the key language is in your industry. Make sure that you're using that appropriately and in relevant terms when you're interviewing for the position. Number 4, again, I had mentioned before, being a teacher takes a huge time commitment. So that's the other thing that you want to ask yourself. Do you have the time to dedicate to being an effective teacher? Do you have the time to dedicate to updating your syllabus, to doing your online work, grading your papers, making sure that your students are following along with the syllabus, answering questions, setting up your office hours? Because I was doing this part-time because I was also working a full-time job. So you have to make sure that you're setting those appropriate office hours. If your students have questions, you want to make sure that you're grading the papers and then returning the papers in a timely manner. That was something that I struggled with when I first started. I would give a paper 5 or 6 pages, but then if you give a paper 5 to 6 pages to 20 to 30 students, then you have to go through and grade 30 papers for all of those students. So you don't want to shortchange the curriculum. You want to make sure that you have enough curriculum to make it through the entire semester and that you're not doing fluff work, but that you're doing work that's relevant, that you're using your creativity, and that you're making the course come to life. Because you want the students to be prepared to enter the social work profession. So you want to use as relevant of examples as possible. You want to give real life examples of things that you experience in the field, and you definitely want to make sure that you're preparing the students for what's going to come when they transition into the profession. So if you don't have the time to grade, if you don't have the time to follow up with the students, if you don't have the time to commit to increasing your learning and education around being a teacher, then you might want to think about a better time that could be a good fit or other work that you can do outside of being an adjunct professor that can boost your income, because you don't, again, want to shortchange your students, because these are the next set of professionals that you're preparing to go out into the field. And you want to make sure that you're dedicating enough time to answer all of their questions, and you want to make sure that they feel equipped with transitioning into the field and that you didn't fail to cover anything that was a part of the course. So this isn't one of the 6, but it's something that I definitely want to make mention of is timing. So you definitely have to make sure when you're planning out your course curriculum that you consider timing, because you might not be able to cover everything that's in your course manual or in your course book, but you don't want to spend too much time on a particular subject and keep running out of time every session to where you're not able to cover the things that are going to be covered on the test. So timing is going to be very critical, which is going to go into you making sure that you have the time to plan, that you're a very effective planner, that you're not a long-winded person, that you're very concise and precise when you're teaching. Because you don't want to spend a lot of time just talking about yourself personally and giving a lot of personal examples, and then you fail to review the course curriculum and the things that the students need to pass the test and then to feel equipped to move into the profession. And lastly, number 5, you want to ask yourself, are you a student advocate or are you just doing this for the money? I would not advise, again, being an adjunct professor if you're just doing it for the money. Now, when I was an adjunct professor, I was adding an extra $900 a month to my income. So it was very helpful to have that extra income. But in addition to that, any training that the school offered as it related to student retention and student engagement, I attended a lot of those training sessions because it wasn't just about me wanting to earn more income, but I also wanted to better understand the problems that first-year students had. I wanted to understand how I could be a better advocate for those students. I wanted to better understand what were some of the key transition points that those students face that keep them from completing. And completion is a huge factor when you're working in higher ed. So you want to understand all of those factors that play into why your students are dropping out of your course. And if you don't take the time to educate yourself around those things, then you'll find that you'll be disconnected from your students' experiences and you won't create a lot of room for life to happen. And I think that's one of the biggest complaints that I noticed that college students had is when they had a professor who didn't understand that their life and life experiences were definitely playing a role in the way that they were able to show up as students. That doesn't mean that you let the students slack off. It doesn't mean that you don't hold them accountable. And it doesn't mean that you don't make them keep certain deadlines as it relates to your coursework, but it means that you can have a little bit of flexibility. You can have a little grace, and you can also have a little empathy and understanding as it relates to where your student is in their life. So these are 5 key things that I think that you should keep in mind before you decide to apply for an adjunct social work profession. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please like, subscribe, or share. I'll be uploading more videos to help you deepen your level of self-awareness and to increase your competence and confidence in the profession. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, be well.